Just a little maritime incident. These words have earned numerous reactions from the public as Philippine President Duterte gave his statement after news broke out that a Chinese boat sank and abandoned a Filipino fishing boat with 22 fishermen in it. Who would have known that this simple statement can actually turn someone's image into something less impressive? From his usual foul and tactless statements against several country leaders to a silent and out-of-character downplay of a not-so-little incident, has President Duterte really sold out the Philippines to China? This is Speak Up. Let's get into the details on the issues surrounding the Philippine and China relations at present. The presidential spokesperson and the defense secretary had a more appropriate reaction when they demanded an explanation and were quick to condemn the action of the Chinese boat crew last June 9. However, only a day passed when their stance on the issue changed to a diplomatic one. Days went on and the president remained silent until he released his statement on June 17, and it was not the reaction that people were expecting. The president's critics have expressed their opinions, pointing out that his actions only proved that he was helpless to China's bullying, especially involving the long-disputed West Philippine Sea. On June 24, Monday, President Duterte apologized to the 22 Filipino fishermen, but maintained his view that the incident was not reason enough to go into war with China. He made the statement as the Filipino fishermen expressed disappointment over his comments on the ramming of their boat by the bigger Chinese vessel. How the Philippine government handled the events of the past weeks has only raised doubts among the people over the current state of the Philippine-China relations. The president clearly didn't want to get involved in the rising tension that the maritime incident was causing, since he refused to make it an issue. And even as he agreed to a joint investigation to let China clarify what happened, he seemed determined not to let things end in a bloody conclusion. What may have pushed the Chinese fishing boats to be bolder in their attempt to be more assertive in the disputed waters either resulted from the Chinese government's support or lack of control over their fishermen. This may only be one of the many tension-filled encounters between fishermen from both nations unless the Philippines and China come to an agreement about the code of conduct in the South China Sea. Surely, a lot of Filipinos have come up with their own worst-case scenario in the event that war really breaks out between the Philippines and China after all this tension over the collision in the West Philippine Sea explodes. A handful of them might have already thought that with our current resources, China would definitely win, and the president was only too wise to point that out more than once. The Philippine military force would crumble under China's army and fleets. It wouldn't even matter how determined our soldiers will be to make a stand and to hold their ground. China would still almost effortlessly invade the country. Even the treaty between the US and the Philippines wouldn't be enough to stop it. People know that the US already has a lot on its plate, and the least they could do is to half-heartedly send out a number of their troops. It is also possible that China wouldn't have to resort to violence to force our country to surrender. Critics have already warned that the Philippines could be the next victim of what they say is China's debt trap diplomacy, in which Beijing gives friendly loans to supply money for infrastructure projects in financially weak countries in exchange for control over strategic assets. These scenarios can't be too far from possible, as the Philippine economy is already dominated by the Chinese for one. Just think about the number of investors and businesses in the Philippines ran by the Chinese. Countries like Sri Lanka has already given the strategic port of Hambantota to Beijing on a 99-year lease as a way of repaying the loans they got from China. What did they say about dealing with the Chinese? They wouldn't be very well known in the business world if they weren't good at making business with people. They've most probably been molded to think like a boss since childhood. However picture-perfect the Philippine-China relations might seem, the fact that not even the government can deny is that the country is in a win-lose situation, and the Philippines is at the receiving end of that situation. The president, though with good intentions, might have really unwittingly bartered the country's sovereignty to China. And some of the signs are just starting to show not only on how he reacted to the recent collision in the West Philippine Sea, but with other incidents as little as allowing illegal Chinese workers in the country and hiring Chinese workers to handle the government's construction program, and even paying them a rate that is far higher than his countrymen's rate. With all these little incidents, people won't be surprised if the country ends up in a bigger incident soon, as big as a Chinese invasion. This is the weekly trending news. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.